Under the cover of the Orange Bowl, we got some absolutely massive transfer portal news. Pete Nakos of On3 breaks it. Carson Beck is going to enter the transfer portal. Now, I believe as we sit here right now recording this, he has not yet entered. The assumption is he eventually will pop up in there here pretty shortly. One, we'll went into this. Two, where could he potentially end up? We're going to do our very best to make sense of this and give our prediction for where we think he ends up as of right now. But first things first, if you're a college football sicko, if you love this sport with every fiber of your being, not just during the season, but all year round, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. We appreciate y'all in advance for that. Also, follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at PicKell. Let me know where you think Carson Beck is heading. Let's start here. This makes a lot of sense because Carson Beck originally declared for the NFL draft. And you could see why he would do that because he had a great year the year prior to this year. This year was far below what you would have imagined he had cooked up for this season in the preseason. Massively underachieved statistically, throwing 12 interceptions. I think he wanted to accomplish a lot more from a team perspective when it comes to what Georgia did this year relative to the year before, making the SEC championship game and then not reaching the national championship game. They won the SEC, but Carson Beck in that SEC title game got injured, hurt the elbow, has had surgery on the elbow, and it sounds like, with that surgery, he wasn't going to really be able to do a whole lot when it comes to throwing the football, when it comes to auditioning for the NFL, pro day, combine alike. So you take all that with the negative season, with the injury, and you're like, well, from what we can gather, before the year, talking about Carson Beck potentially being a top 3, even the number 1 pick in this draft. Now, after that year, you're like, I don't even think he's going to be a first-round pick from what everyone in the NFL draft circles seems to be saying. So, making a pivot somewhere else and giving yourself a chance to, 1, have more experience at the collegiate level, have a third year starting somewhere. 2, give yourself more and probably improved tape from the 2024 season. And the third part of this, being able to answer any questions that maybe NFL teams have about your health. Like if Carson Beck were to continue this NFL draft process, go to the combine, all this, that, and the other, everyone's asking, hey, how's the UCL? Hey, how's the elbow? Hey, are you healthy? And it's one thing to say that in an interview and then eventually hope someone drafts you and then show up to camp and then start throwing it around. It's a whole other thing to show up there a year from now, point to the tape at whatever school he's at and say, yeah, I'm good. You had any questions about my elbow? Turn on the tape, watch me ball, and we should be able to kind of make our own assessment from that point forward. Let the tape speak. Now, the most interesting part of this to me, outside of where he could end up at, is what happened at Georgia, why he didn't end up transferring back there. From what I can gather, you would have to assume that a spot like Georgia would at least entertain the idea of welcoming Carson Beck back with open arms, given what he did in the 2023 season. However, I think to some degree, you sit here and say it's nobody's fault. It's not on Mike Bobo. It's not on Carson Beck. It's not on the skill players. It might just be one of those things where it's kind of run its course. And a fresh start might just be best for everybody, especially Carson Beck. So what we know about this as of right now, it is reported that it is expected to have a timeline when it comes to Carson Beck's decision somewhere within a week. It's also expected, per our own Pete Nakos here at On3, that he's going to land a historic NIL deal somewhere north of $2.5 million. Pete Nakos said that on Paul Feinbaum here this afternoon rather. A lot to unpack, a lot going on here. I just want to remind us all of this. As much as the Carson Beck stock from an NFL perspective may have dipped given this past season's performance, I think we all need to be reminded what he did the year before. Like, the dude was hooping. There was a reason why we talked about him being a Heisman Trophy favorite and potential first overall pick, sometime in the summer. There's a reason for that, because of what he did when he had weapons around him. And pointing to the weapons that he didn't have around him this past season, they led America in drops. What more do you need to say? They couldn't really run the football. So as much as Carson Beck probably has some blame, and he has some blame based on what they didn't do in Athens last year, I think there's a lot to be said for what he had around him the year before with Brock Bowers and company, and how effective they were offensively there, his first year starting, and then this past season where, let's be honest, we saw the game against Notre Dame with a different quarterback, and Gunnar Stockton, I thought he played well, but he wasn't getting a whole lot more help either, and that's a good Notre Dame defense, so kind of all a lot of pieces there to that puzzle, but I don't think Carson Beck deserves to have all this, negativity around what he was this past season. I think there's a lot of pieces to that whole operation. So, where could he go? There are 3 schools that are being reported as kind of being in the Carson Beck sweepstakes as it stands right now. And again, it's over at all3.com. Pete Nakos has got a report out there, so go check that out. Miami is the betting favorite. Miami would be my prediction as of right now with this news coming out today for where he would end up next. And you don't really have to do a whole lot of squinting to see why this would be the fit. The first part of this is Shannon Dawson's offense. They're going to throw it around the yard. You're going to put up good numbers. You're going to have a chance to really strut your stuff for the NFL. The other part of this, Cam Ward, as a transfer portal quarterback in a one-season sample size, has laid a pretty obvious blueprint as to how you can have success and help your NFL draft stock. Cam Ward, funny enough, made his own NFL declaration before eventually circling back and committing to Miami via the transfer portal. And in one season, went from a guy that you heard his name being talked about anywhere from like third round and further down to now he's probably going to be, I would expect now, a top 3 pick, top 5 pick, top 10 pick. So pretty big difference. What made the difference? That one season at Miami. Also, if you want to add another filter onto that, his girlfriend is also at Miami, and Carson Beck is from the state of Florida. So take of that as you will. Ohio State, another school that's mentioned. This is another one, man, where you're just like, if I want to have great weapons to throw to, can you imagine for a second? Just put yourself in this scenario. It is a crispy fall Saturday. We got Ohio State lining up with Michigan. Down the sideline, back to Smith, 3rd touchdown of the day. Carson Beck throwing to Jeremiah Smith. Are we kidding ourselves right now? With Chip Kelly, arguably the best play caller in college football. Again, that makes a lot of sense to me. And you pair Jeremiah Smith with the other just embarrassment of riches that Ohio State is always going to have at the receiver position. Plus, you look at what Will Howard did there this year. Now, Will Howard, I think, is a good quarterback. I think Will Howard has proven he's a good quarterback based on what he's done this season. But if I'm Carson Beck, I believe personally that I'm a better thrower of the football than Will Howard. Will Howard this past season at Ohio State to this point has thrown for right around 3,500 yards and accounted for almost 40 touchdowns. So if I'm Carson Beck, I see that, see the system, see the weapons. Would make a lot of sense. Would make a lot of sense if he were to somehow end up in Columbus. And then Texas Tech. Kind of an interesting school to be thrown in the mix here. And optically, it does feel a little bit funny because you're like, okay, you got Miami, you got Ohio State, you got Texas Tech. Now, that logo isn't usually grouped in with those other logos when it comes to recruiting battles or transfer portal battles. Doesn't mean it's not real. Doesn't mean it's not real. They have the number 1 portal class in America right now in Lubbock for a reason. They're well-resourced. I'm sure that's a massive part of this. But I also think the Joey McGuire effect, head coach out there for Texas Tech, that dude is one of the most personable, charismatic, elite communicators I've ever been around. Got a chance to be around him for a very short period of time at Baylor. That dude is first class in everything he does. So all I'll say is, if Carson Beck and Joey McGuire have some extended conversations, would it be a surprise, again, optically? Sure. But I don't think it's by any stretch of the imagination unreasonable to assume that Texas Tech is in this Carson Beck sweepstakes, and that's being corroborated, of course, by Pete Nakos over at On3. So, again, Miami's my betting favorite. I would probably pick them. No, I would pick them as of right now to be the school that lands him. I think, and again, we're hearing this is going to happen here pretty fast when it comes to a decision. I'll also add, though, Georgia was my betting favorite for Caleb Downs, and then he ended up at Ohio State. So the portal, man, we think we have it nailed down. Things kind of change quickly. This thing has a lot of layers to it. Would expect the Carson Beck situation to be no different, but I would predict as of right now for Carson Beck to end up at Miami. Last thing I'll add, I don't think this is the last time we see a move like this where a quarterback declares for the draft, and then some time passes, and then his name pops up on an On3 social graphic, hey, this guy's going in the portal. Why? Because in today's age of college football, you have a chance now to help yourself when it comes to your NFL draft stock and still make a lot of money. Like, hey, maybe you're going to be a 3rd-round pick, give or take. Okay, well, I can go back to college for another year, improve my long-term status in the NFL, improve my draft stock right now, and make some good money. I think it makes a lot of sense. So the draft declarations, especially from quarterbacks, where that position is going to be at a premium every single portal cycle, there is no shortage of teams every year that need a quarterback to change the trajectory of their program. Have to believe now those declarations should be taken with a grain of salt. So Carson Beck, again, makes a lot of sense. Help your draft stock, help potentially your overall NFL standing, even if your draft stock doesn't change just by playing more games, getting more experience, and answering some questions about your health and letting the tape do the talking. So let me know in the comment section. Where's my guy headed? Miami, Ohio State, Texas Tech, somewhere else? We will have reactions, analysis for you as soon as Carson Beck does make a decision, and I'm sure we'll talk about this here in the future right here on this platform, the On3 YouTube channel, on this show, The Hard Count. For Cato on the ones and twos, for myself, JD PicKell, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.